In 2020, there's probably more software development roles out there than ever before, but at the same time, there's more applicants out there as well. So what can you do to make sure that your application stands out, making sure that your personal brand is strong, and making sure that you're fully prepped for the interview process? I'll be covering just that in this video. Stay tuned. Hey guys, it's Jerome. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time viewing, make sure you hit the subscribe button and you can be on the lookout for future videos just like this. But with that said, I'm going to kind of jump straight into the next topic. Software development is a really big thing nowadays and there's a lot of jobs out there. But with the fact that there's so much applicants out there as well, it is important that you do everything possible to actually stand out yourself. First things first, it's important that you tailor your CV to each individual role. Now, what do I mean by that? Obviously, it will take a fair amount of time if you're kind of starting from scratch and writing a CV for every individual job. And that's not exactly what I mean. So you can kind of think of this like building your main master CV that's going to have all of your accomplishments, all of your experiences relating to all roles and all personal projects that you've worked on. But then you want to kind of trim the CV down for the actual job application and try and focus and pick things that are more relevant to that job posting than others. So for example, if you're looking at a job posting and it mentions about building performant and robust code, think about past experiences that relate to that, where you might have improved the performance of an application, or if you have some stats to even back up a piece of code that you wrote or an application that you worked on that has met a particular criteria of being performant, you can mention that in your CV. What you want to do is try and tailor some of the things that are asked in the job specification as close as possible to the experiences on your CV. And don't be afraid to actually reword some of the experiences in your CV to closely match some of the phrases and sentences that are specified in the job posting. When you think about it, maybe the first person that's looking at your CV might not be a developer. They may have ideas of some of those technologies, but you're going to actually be helping them out and therefore helping yourself out if you can actually match your CV as closely as possible for the job specification so that they can easily look at it, see how you as a candidate fits for that role and put you on the yes pile of CVs. And if you're using this technique to actually trim your CV down to each individual job posting, really your CV shouldn't be more than 2 pages max. I know it's tempted, especially if you're a more experienced developer, to put all of the things that you've mentioned and all of the things that you've worked on, but the person that's going to be looking at your CV is going to be trying to run through it as quick as possible. So really try and focus on just those things that are relevant to the job and draw focus on those particular things. So really having more than 2 pages kind of detracts from that. If you're a less experienced developer and maybe applying to more of an entry-level position, then it might be the case that you don't have too much commercial experience to actually pull from. But don't be afraid to use your own personal projects and put that into your CV as well. That can easily justify some of the things that are mentioned in the job posting. Building your personal brand nowadays is probably more important than ever as well. You can use that to really set yourself apart from other candidates. By building your personal brand, and that could be in the form of making sure that your LinkedIn page is also up to date and has some of the things mentioned on your CV. You can put some of your personal projects online and showcase some of the skills that you've mentioned on your CV. This can be particularly helpful if you're a front-end developer working with tools such as JavaScript, HTML, CSS. You can showcase that in websites or web apps that you've built. You can build your own CV online as a personal website as well. And that can be a really easy way to showcase some of those skills. And you can also do things like contribute to open source technologies or open source projects on GitHub or GitLab. That way people can actually see that you're committed to this project. You can specify that on your CV and LinkedIn as well. Now, nailing the interview is obviously going to be the main thing that puts you above other candidates. But the thing about that is making sure you do the right type of prep and that you prep enough is actually half the battle. So when you think about the interviewer point of view, they're going to be wanting to assess you on two parts or two types of things. It's going to be your technical skills. They're going to be asking you technical questions or challenging your technical ability to see if you actually have the skill set that matches your CV and that matches the job posting. There's also going to be the soft skills side to see if you have the behavioral capabilities to be able to do that role as well. So they might be calling on your past experiences or cases where you've actually had to achieve or overcome a particular problem and how you go about doing that. It's important to try and gather as much as you can on the interview process for that particular company as much as you can. So that would involve going to websites such as Glassdoor, particularly helpful if you're applying to a big company, as there's probably going to be a lot more interviewees, and as such more likelihood that they're actually going to write something on Glassdoor for the experiences that they've had interviewing. So you can use that to see maybe the type of questions that they get asked, the type of experience that they've had, and maybe the number of different stages within that interview process. If you're applying through a recruiter, you can usually get some of that information as well from the recruiter. They'll want to make sure that you're successful, so they're going to be passing on a lot of information that they get from the past candidates that they've placed there. Once you've got an idea of the interview process and what it's like, you can focus your prepping around that. So if it is going to be technical questions that they're going to ask, you can look at the examples of technologies that are listed on the job posting, and you can even Google example questions and answers for that specific technology. Things that are the basis of the job description, such as Java, or if it's a JavaScript role, obviously you feel like you should probably do a little bit more prepping there and know inside and out. So you can always cover some of those things, even things that you feel like you might already know, just briefly review them so that you can have clear, concise answers in your head for common questions that you feel are probably going to come up in the interview process. What you don't want to do is cram new technologies and new concepts into your head that you've not been familiar with or worked with in the past, as it can give the impression that you've worked with this thing to the interviewer even though you haven't. You can definitely be caught out that way if they drill into further, more advanced questions around that. It's important, if a job posting does have mention of something that you've not particularly used before, it's a good idea to research what it is and try and relate it to maybe the technologies you do know, but specify that this is something that is new, you would be interested in learning, and you do have some skill set and you do have the ability in the past to pick up new technologies and demonstrate experiences that you've actually worked with something similar. It's also possible that you might have to sit some sort of coding exercise as part of your interview or the technical interview process. So you can actually prep for that as well. You can go to websites such as HackerRank, which have example problems that you can practice solving and get familiar with the idea of just solving programming problems. Even though in your day-to-day job, you may be doing something that may be related to that technology already, you do want to practice some of those just coding techniques, getting familiar with the idea of just picking up a programming problem and trying to work on it. There's also going to be the soft skills and the behavioral side of it that they're going to want to assess with you as well. A good way to actually demonstrate that is to think back of past experiences and actually have these prepared well before the interview. You can use the job posting type of candidate that they're looking for and try and look back and think of examples when you've demonstrated just that. Think of multiple examples for each of the items on the job posting. And that way you can work that into your answers and give the interviewer a real impression of the type of things that you've done in the past. It's important when you're preparing these examples, you can use the STAR methodology. Think of the situation that you are in, think of what the actual task was, and think about the action that you personally took to achieve that task and what was the result, hopefully a positive result based on the action that you've done. So use that to build your examples so that you can pull from them quite easily in the interview without having to search for them for the first time in the interview. That way you can keep them concise and you can try and relate them particularly to the things mentioned in the job posting. And there's actually no shame in practicing these examples, maybe in front of a mirror or just out loud. Familiarize yourself with actually speaking and talking about these examples. And this is really helpful, particularly if you haven't done an interview in quite some time, because it could take some time just to warm up and get used to that idea of speaking about some of these examples you've done. When you're thinking about them, make sure you write them down, and even some of those technical questions and answers that you've practiced before as well. Keep track of them. Keep a notebook where you can keep adding to them, you can keep referring to them. It will be really handy when you're applying to a future job to go back to them and make use of the prep that you've already done. I hope you found some of that advice helpful. Let me know in the comments things that you've done to prepare for your interview. As well, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see future videos like this, and keep tuned for future videos on this channel.